My name is uh Mark Andrew. It's not really Ro and Lance. It's it's just the name that I use also in it's the name of my son. It's
Okay,
so I kind of like use it in my account. So but you can just call me Andrew. Okay, it's okay.
Andrew.
So
Okay, nice to meet you.
Andrew. Yeah, nice to meet you too. I will be discussing to you what the Filipino language is and why is it some a language that you should learn. Why is it going to be easy for you to learn in Filipino, which is Tagalog? Okay, Filipino and Tagalog is the same thing. Internationally, it's called Filipino, but here in the Philippines, we call our language, national language, as Tagalog. And it's the same thing with just like in Japanese, like in the international way of saying it is Japanese, but they called it what is Nihongo, right? So that's also the same case with Philippines, Filipino or Tagalog. So here, do you need to consider when you're trying to learn a new dialect or a new language, right? So every one of us, especially the people who are interested in learning new languages, these are the two things that you really need to like take into consideration when you're trying to learn a new language because most of the time these two things are the biggest hurdles that you're going to encounter, and I think these are also the 2 points that you really need based on what you really want to do with that language. You either want to read or write or just converse or speak using that language, right? So here, the first or the two major things that I kind of like want to point out is the phonetics and the linguistics right here, and the writing system of a new language. So we all know what phonetics and linguistics are. It's like what you hear, the words that you hear in that language, the sounds that they use, how they make words, right? And the writing system is just the sounds attached into physical images like characters, letters, right? So these are the two things that you need to learn that has that language has in order for you to be to try to like do can I learn this language if what do I need to do what do I need to learn, what do I need to know about this language. So these are the two things that you have to consider about that. And before I speak about Filipino and what the Filipino language is, I would like to just briefly use these two point of reference with English and Japanese. Okay, so as so far, do you understand that part? Those parts that I'm trying
Yes,
to say.
yes, yes.
Oh yes, okay. So we all can relate to that, right? We all of us tried to like learn a new language one point in our life, and I think those are the two really main points that you need to consider. So here, first, I know we all know what English is, and here the writing system of the English we all know about it. It's the 26 letters of the alphabet, and from those we have five vowels, right? The letter A, E, I, O, and U, which is respectively sounded as e, or o and u, right? So the remaining ones will be is called consonants. So this is the writing system that we are all familiar with, which is English, because English is what do you what can I say about English? It's the internationally accepted. I think I know. I mean international language, right? Especially in businesses, formal occasions. Most of the time, you have to have at least a conversation level of English knowledge, right? And then this is something that's really hard when you're trying to learn English, especially for us. Me, I'm a Filipino. The Filipinos, this is the part that's really hard for us. It's the phonetics and the linguistics, because when you're trying to learn English, it's really tricky and diverse. What do I mean? It means that it has so many rules in reading those words, but there are also exceptions to those rules, and there are a lot of exceptions to those rules. Just an example, I'm not gonna cite everything about it. Just an example for this is when you're trying to read a word with consistent what do you call this? They have the same letters, but there are some exceptions on how you have to read them. So the first, as you can see here in the top left, is a set of words, and they have a consistent letters with them. Okay, they have the same letters, which is the OSE for the first example right here. The first set of words, we have the O's sound, which is the OSE part, right, in those words. So if you read them, you say nose, rose, pose, dose, and chose. But when you see a letter L, you don't really say it as lows, right? You pronounce the English word as lose. So that's an exception on how you have to read the English word. And the same goes with the other examples, which we have the gave sound or the ave sound. We have gave, slave, brave, save, and cave. Even though you have those, you don't say have. But you when you encounter this set of letters, HAVE, you have to say have, right? So those are the things that I'm saying that there's a rule, but there's also an exception to those rules of reading English. That's why English is really hard for non-native English speakers. Okay, so the third one in the last example, we have hive, five, dive, jive, and drive, but you don't say give, what you say is give, right? So I know for a certain level, you guys and all the others who are watching this video have already encountered something like this when you were studying your English. And not only that, some of all the other parts that is kind of like hard, the thing that has rules and exceptions to those rules is these types of words that is really abundant in English. We have homographs and homophones, which if you don't have any knowledge of those things, these three things, homonyms, homographs, or homophones, um, what they call this? I'm just gonna explain them in an easier way. So homonyms is just one exact word. One exact word. What does it mean? It's a single word that has the same spelling and the same sound of pronunciation, but depending on what you're trying to describe or say, it has a multiple meaning. So, oh, wait a minute. Can you give me a second because the kids are like playing in
Yeah, no
the room
problem.
next to mine. So
No
that's
problem.
okay. I'm really sorry about this. Okay. Oh, oh, I'm really sorry about that. Okay. So let's try to continue because my brother-in-law visited us and they are staying at the room beside me. I didn't know that they were coming today, but it's okay because I really love kids and yeah, the kids are playing at the room next to mine. So if ever you hear some noises, it's because there's a lot of people right now inside the house. Okay, so so where were we? Oh yeah, the homonyms, right? So for example, I have an example right here. Is the word spring. You see the table for the homonyms. Spring is spelled the same way. It's sounded out as the same way, pronounced as the same way. Spring. There's no other way of reading it, but depending on what you're trying to say, it has multiple meanings, right? So you can say spring, which is the season for spring, right? The season spring. Then we have a spring, which is a coiled metal thing, okay? And then the spring, which is like hot springs, it's a body of water, right? So depending on what you're trying to say, if you don't really describe it that much, it's going to be it's some people might think of a different thing. That's what homonym is. I think almost all of languages have this. It's really common, but in English, there's a lot of words that has multiple meanings. Okay, and then I'm going to explain a bit about homographs. I have an example right here. It's just a word that has this one spelling. So I have a word here which is live, and it can be read in two ways, right? You can read it as live or live. So even though it has the same spelling, if you change on the way you read it, it becomes a different meaning. Okay. Then homophones is just one sound. Okay, you hear this sound and you try to spell it, but there are multiple ways of spelling it, and by that it means that it also has a different meaning when you spell it in a different way. So for example, right here is the sound as RAYT, which is right. Right. This is the phonetic symbol. Okay. So when you hear the word or the sound right, you can spell it in a various or different kinds of ways. So you can spell it as just like the example right here. We have the fourth one, the RITE. It is sounded as a right. Then RIGHT. It also sounds as right, read as right, and right, which is WRITE. It is also sounded as right, but it has different meanings. So those are the things that I'm saying. These are some of those hard parts in learning English. And I kind of like stumbled upon this poem in the internet. And what this poem is trying to say is that it's really hard to make a singular thing in a singular thing in English and make it into plural form, because there are rules in it, but there are exceptions to those rules itself. Okay, and the other part is if you read the bottom part of this poem right here, it says we speak of brother and also brethren, but though we say mother, we never say metheren. Okay, then the next part is then the masculine pronouns are he, his, and him, but imagine the feminine she, she's, and shim. Okay, so what this means is that he and the counterpart of he is she, right? But we have his and him, but the counterpart of this both of these words is her. It's not she's and it's not shim. So that is something that's really weird in English. I don't know about Japanese of how they do it, but for us in the Philippines, it's just we are using something that we adopted from the Spaniards, because we were once a colony of the Spaniards, so we are using some of the rules in making a male object or thing into a female version. We do the same thing with them. It's for example, we have Miguelito, right? If you hear the O sound, it's a male, but if you hear the A sound, like Juanita, and then it becomes a girl. So that's exactly the same thing with Philippines. So that's how we say a boy, this one's a boy, this one's a girl. And I don't know about the rules in Japanese of how they do it, but in English, it's really this is really complex. This is the things that has a rule into it, but there are a lot of parts here that's just exceptions to those rules. So I hope this is just a brief discussion of what English is, and then next is let's try to differentiate the English one with the Japanese one. And I know most of us also we have a background, and who doesn't want to learn Japanese anyways, right? So everyone wants to learn. Almost all of the people that I encountered, they always want to learn Japanese, and maybe it's for personal uh, personal things, but most of them, yeah, really want to learn Japanese. So here, I don't know if I'm wrong. I'm really sorry if I'm wrong about this, but so far I'm also a beginner in learning Japanese. But so far, these are the things that I have seen, and hopefully, I don't sound rude to the Japanese people, because they I know that they really love uh, their country. They're like everything that they do in Japan is for their country, and I respect that, because that's the same thing with the Philippines. Okay, so here the writing system that I found is they call it the kana, and it's divided into three major parts, which is the hiragana, the katakana, and the kanji. And there are different styles of writing. If you're trying to learn Japanese, you do know the differences between these three. So, but most of the parts here is that what's important is the hiragana and the katakana. I found out that these are the the basic sounds that they use in their conversation, but which is natural for them is the hiragana, but the katakana has more sounds into it than the hiragana. And I'm going to show a bit of that later on. And here is how do the Japanese sound out their writing system. It's very strict and very precise. What does that mean? When you just see a specific symbol, you have to say or pronounce a specific sound. It doesn't change whatever combination of symbols that you see. It's going to sound the same. There are some exceptions to that, but it's kind of minimal that you kind of like can pick them up or learn them as you try to learn Japanese. Just like when you see watashi wa, the wa there is really spelled as the ha symbol, but that's something that you just kind of like pick up when you're trying to learn the Japanese language. Am I right, Miss I? Hello.
No, I didn't really understand the point. I'm sorry. Can you repeat again?
Oh yeah, I'm just saying that when you see, for example, the hiragana, when you see that specific symbol, it means that you're going to say that specific sound.
Yeah.
There are some exceptions to it, just like when you say watashi wa, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because the wa there, the symbol there is the symbol ha, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes. So there are some exceptions to this, but it's so minimal that you kind of like can adapt to them once you encounter them in the Japanese language. So here, if you see the symbol for the hiragana a, you're always going to say a. There's no other variations to those sounds. It's just the same sound as you encounter that symbol. So that's what I'm saying. So what does these two things have to do with Filipino? And how easy it is for to learn Filipino itself. Okay, so Filipino, if I compare it with English and in Japanese, it's like it's like English meeting Japanese and becoming it a language of its own. How do I say this? Alphabet the Philippines also has the alphabet, the Roman alphabet, okay, the 26 letters of the alphabet. So we have also five vowels, and the rest will be consonants. So we also have the same writing system as the English. That's something that's really I think most of the people, or if you have a Filipino friend, they can attest to this, that we are using also the English writing system. If you see Filipino words, how we sound out our words is just like the Japanese. Okay? Even though the Japanese have strict sounds, they have vowels and then syllables. Syllables by meaning it's a combination of the consonant K. It is they combine it with the vowels, so they have ka, ke, ki, ka, ke, ku, ke, ko, right? So those are the syllable sounds that they have in Japanese. But in Philippines, we have a clear distinction between the consonant sounds and the vowel sounds. And that's the only thing that is keeping, or I mean, that I think the Japanese doesn't really have, but they I kind of like hear some of Japanese words that you kind of like don't hear the vowel sounds, especially with the u sounds. For example, arimas. They don't say arimasu. No, they just say arimas. So that sound at the end is like the consonant s itself. So that's, I think, some, if the Japanese can like compromise on that, I think they can also have their own sound for the consonant. But that's just me. Okay, I'm still a beginner with the Japanese. So um for example, I have here is that most of the people that I kind of like interacted or met with, they try to learn they are English speakers trying to learn Japanese, and Japanese speakers trying to learn English. They're trying to practice. I encountered a lot of them, and they were trying. I think it's harder for Japanese to learn English than English people trying to learn Japanese. Why? Because English, they only need to like learn the writing system. And in Japan, in or the Japanese language, they have so many symbols, and most of them are they look almost the same, but there's some small distinctions, right? But for Japanese, they try to speak English, but there are I'm not saying that it's the Japanese fault. Maybe I can lean more into saying this is just me, my personal opinion of this. I think it's the English language's fault. To be honest, it's not the Japanese fault. Why they can't or I'm not saying that Japanese are bad in English. No, I'm not saying that. It's just that it's hard. It's harder for us, especially Asians, for us to learn English. It's because we're trying to learn different English. I don't know if you kind of like picked that up. It's we're trying to learn different kinds of English. That's it. English has there's a variety of kinds of English, right? We have English US, which is America. Um, we have English Canada, English British, English Australia, and just like us, us Filipinos, the Japan also like invites some native speakers of these English countries to teach here and teach us all about English, right? But that's also the reason why we can't really use our English. The same goes with the Japanese. They can't really use their English because they are learning all different kinds of English. So maybe I don't know if there is or I don't have any knowledge of it, but I don't think that the English have established an internationally accepted kind of English that all other non-native English speaker country or speaking countries should learn. So if we have just one kind of English, internationally accepted English, and all the other countries would try to learn that, then maybe we can break the differences in learning English. Because I encountered some Japanese people, some Japanese students, and I asked them what kind of English they were learning. Majority of them were British English, and the way they try to imitate the how the British say it, how they ask questions, it's different from us Filipinos because we try to learn uh, the English of American English or the U.S. English. So I don't know. That's just my observation, and I don't think nobody has ever tried to talk about it. But it's really a big issue that for example, Japanese majority of them is just trying to learn the British English. But as for us Filipinos, we're just trying to learn the American English. And once we talk, there's a big difference. There's a big gap because their English is British, our English is just American. So if we have, I think it's a wrong mindset to just teach or just get a country's own English because I know for certain that the British English is different from the U.S. English, from the Canadian English, from the Australian English. So I think that's it's not our fault. I think I'm just saying that I don't want to sound rude, but I think it's not our fault. Us who are trying to learn or who are having ESL English as our second language. Okay, so here if there are some Japanese out there, they're trying to practice their English sounds. Filipinos are one of the top English speakers in Asia. And I'm not saying that Japanese are bad. I think this is a fact because there are like tests that are being done, and Filipinos is one of the top in Asia. Why? Maybe the reason why is because we have abacada system. And if you have a friend who is a Filipino and you're Japanese, you can just ask them, what is the abacada system? The sounds that you hear in the abacada system is the same as the sounds that you hear in Japanese, just a consonant with another vowel. So here, for example, the first letter or the first word that we have here is the cake, and below the word cake is the phonetics for cake itself. Okay, so I don't know how to explain about that. That is how they sound out in their own way the word cake. Here in the Philippines, we also do the same thing, but we use our own sounds. Our own sounds. We don't use the sounds of English to sound out how do we spell it in our language. So we sound it out the way uh, Filipinos or the through the limits of the sounds that Filipinos know. So we have k, e, y, and k. That's how you make cake. It, so the letter K for us is k. It's going to sound as k. The e is going to sound as e. The y will always sound as you, and another k would be k. So when you combine all of these sounds into one word, okay, into one syllable, it becomes cake. And if the Japanese, I don't know, I'm not saying that this is not a direct translation because I know that the direct translation of cake in Japanese is keki. Am I right, Miss I?
Yes.
Miss I? Mm-hmm. The direct translation of cake in Japanese is keki.
Yes.
Mm. Yeah, but it's if you hear that the sound keki, it doesn't really sound as cake. But if you kind of like, if Japanese can adopt the abacada system or just use the Romaji sound a word in a foreign word, I believe that they can just practice their English the way that the Japanese can say or use their own sounds in saying English words. So here, just like in the Filipino, the abacada system is just like the Romaji system of the Japanese. So if we try to like use that, the Japanese have the ke sound, the e sound, and the ku sound. So when you combine that and make that into one syllable, then you're going to end up with keiku, keiku. But some Japanese, they when they encounter the u sound at the end, they try to cut the u. So when they some of them may try to like read this, they would try to say keiku, keiku, keiku. They don't, which is same sound as the English sound. Okay, so the same or the next example right here is we have the choco, choco. It is divided into two syllables. We have the cho and the ko. So here in the Philippines, we for us the letter C would always sound as k. That's why when we encounter ch, we use ts instead of ch because we don't have ch sound here. But we do have a counterpart of it, which is the ts sound. Ts, ts, ts. And for some extent, the Japanese also have this. They have the two sound too, and it's almost the same thing with the Philippines. So we have cho and then ko, ts and then o, then k and then a o for ko. So that's choco. And in the Romaji, as you can see, they have cho. I'm kind of like confused in the Romaji system because I believe that the ch sound isn't really in the Japanese. I think they also have the ts sound, which makes it more clearer and crispier. Because when I try to like ask my friends, my peers that I encountered in some social accounts like Discord, I tried to ask them how do you say the chi sound. It doesn't really sound as chi, to be honest. Some of a majority of them they sound it as like tsi, chi. Maybe this is something that is common for the Filipino and the Japanese sound. There's a big difference from the chi and the chi sound. So I kind of like can pick that up because maybe because it's something that is familiar with the Filipino sound. So that is something that maybe I can discuss on another class. For example, if someone's trying to learn Filipino, but for now, yeah, we have the cho sound from the Japanese and then the ko sound. So when they try to mix this up, cho ko, it this this is the sound that sounds just like in English, choco. Okay, so I think the one of the problems that Japanese are encountering is because they try to really imitate the accent of a certain country's way of or an English country's way of saying this specific word. Okay. Um, for example, this third example right here, we have candy, right? So it's candy. For us Filipinos, we don't really want to like stress the accent, so that's why we are kind of like flat on the sounds, right? We have candy, Ken, which is Ken, and the DI, which is D. Okay, so that candy. So it's really not far off from candy in English. So how do Filipino use this? We have the candy sound in Filipino, and we try to morph it by trying to practice and practice and practice until we can finally say the word candy, which is from derived from our sounds, which is candy. Okay, so I think that Japanese can also do this because they have the set of syllables that they can use, which is in the Romaji sound, and they have also ke and the n, which is ken, and then d. They have d. But the direct translation of candy, I believe, in Japanese, when I ask a few friends, is that they say candy, and it's like they have an accent to it. They're trying to imitate also the accent that is with that English word. So again, for the last example that we have here is the word attention. Attention is divided into three syllables. We have the ten, and then shun. For us Filipinos, we have really flat sounds. So we have attention. But as you can, if you're trying to look at the division here, we have the S and the Y. For us Filipinos, we don't have the sh sound, but we can make that shoe sound if we combine S and Y here in the Philippines. And I believe this is something which is also you can pick up in the Japanese, but the Romaji of the sound is SH. I believe it should be SY. I don't know. That's just my opinion, I think. But it sounds more SYO than SHO. It sounds more like SYI, she, than she. For me, I don't know. There's quite like a slight difference on how they say speak those sounds, but I don't know. This is Japanese. I'm not really an expert of this, but the Romaji I think is really different. It should be SYO or SYI for the she sound. So yeah, even though if we try to make these three syllables, they have a for a, then they have te, mm, for for Sean. Okay, so if you're Filipino and try or you're Japanese and try to learn a new language, Filipino will be the one of the easiest languages that you can learn. Why? It's because we have strict sounds just like Japanese. So it's just like for Japanese, it's just like reading Romaji. Filipino is just reading Romaji. Most of Japanese they know how to read Romaji. So if you know how to read Romaji, then it's just like also speaking Filipino. Okay, because the abacada system in the Philippines is just like the Romaji counterpart. So that's it. So if you're Japanese, you want to learn a new language, Filipino is one of the easiest language for you to learn. And the same goes with English. Why? Because we don't have a barrier with our writing system. You know alphabet, and we are using alphabet. So there's no more new writing system to be learned.